Okay, I think I'll make a start here. I appreciate people will be joining as we go along. So hello and welcome to this CIHT presentation. My name is David Mead. I'm the Membership and Services Manager at CIHT. You can also see on the screen Carolyn. She's a fellow of CIHT and is a member of our membership assessment panel. So towards the end of this presentation, she'll be speaking to give just some of her insights and her views on CIHT and FCIHT. And before we start this presentation properly, just some notes. This session is being recorded, and we will be putting the slides on the CIHT website, so it'll be available to members and non-members. I'll make the actual slides that I'm presenting available to you via email following the presentation, so hopefully no need to make a huge amount of notes. We do have lots of time for questions and hopefully answers at the end. For the sake of continuity for the recording, for those who are not joining live, can I ask you to put the questions in the Q&A function that you'll see at the top of the screen? I'll then try and go through those at the end. But by all means, if you think of questions as I'm speaking, put them in the Q&A, and as I say, we'll go through those right at the end. Okay, so just a bit about today's presentation. We'll start off by talking a little bit about CIHT, then looking at what a fellow is and why you should apply. We'll then talk about who should apply and something around myth busting. By myth busting, I mean there's some assumptions that maybe are not quite true about fellowship, so we'll look at those. We'll then look at the nitty-gritty, how to actually apply, what the requirements are, the CVs, the statements, the CPD required. We'll talk a bit about proposers and seconders, because I know that's always an area that comes up for questioning. Some of the admin, just the details, the deadlines, the fees, etc. And then maybe looking a little bit further forward, once you're a fellow, what that will mean. Then, as I mentioned, we'll have a view from an assessor, and at the end we'll have plenty of time for questions. Okay, so I appreciate that most people on this call will already be members of CIHT. We have opened this up to non-members, so if you're not a member of CIHT, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining. Hopefully many of you will be well versed in all things CIHT. However, I do speak to a lot of members who are sometimes maybe a little confused about who we are and what we represent, and really what we do as an institution. Just to give a small example, I'm amazed at the amount of our members who still call us the IHT. We became the CIHT many years ago, over 10 years ago. So yeah, we're the CIHT. If you haven't already, I would advise you to read our 2022 plus strategy paper, which is available on the website. And it really talks about us as an institution and where we are going forward. Really, as well as our mission and vision that you can see here on the screen, we do have overarching themes that you'll really see reflected in everything that we do. And those are climate action, professionalism, and EDI, equality, diversion, and inclusion. And as senior members, and hopefully fellows in the future, we want you to be ambassadors for CIHT, and hopefully your own work practices will align with ours. And really just a bit of advice in terms of your application, you really should be up to date with what's happening with CIHT on both a national and a regional level, or national level. Do visit the website frequently for news and events. The latest edition of TP magazine either has arrived or will be arriving with you very soon. It is also available online from next week. And the main feature, the main cover, is our new president, Karen McShane, and obviously a range of other articles. So do look out for the latest TP magazine. Okay, so what is a fellow? At this point, I tried to find a specific definition of the word fellow. It's quite difficult to find something really specific, as all institutions will have their own take on fellow. Our definition, the CIHT definition, is in blue at the top of the screen. I did take a look at a few other related professional bodies and see how they describe fellows. And there is consistency in that a fellow is really someone who's at the very top of the profession, someone senior, and someone who makes a really positive impact on society. So we hope, again, that aligns with you in your work practices. So why should you apply? There's some of the main reasons here on the screen. Why someone applies, it can differ from person to person. Some people may feel pressurized into applying, either from their company, from their line manager or colleague. And this really is no bad thing. However, we would hope that on an individual level, members want and aspire to become fellows and can become that ambassador for the future. When you become a fellow, you do get FCIHT after your name, and that is a great badge, if you like, to have to carry with you. But we hope it's more than that. We hope it's more about the attitudes and the way people reflect CIHT's attitudes as well. Okay, what we're going to go through now is some myth busting, as I've called it. I'll go through these points one at a time. So number one, we'd like to think that all members should aspire to become a fellow at some point in their career journey. We don't have time limits on how long you need to have been a member, but as a general rule of thumb, we're looking at around 5 years experience at one of those senior positions. And really, I think the message here is we're looking at quality over quantity. Just because someone's been doing a role for X number of years, it doesn't mean they automatically are eligible for fellowship. And we're really looking for that person who's done above and beyond the normal, if you like. You don't have to be a member before you apply for FCIHT, although maybe your review is my question, why not? And there may be very legitimate reasons why you've not been a member before you apply for fellowship. Maybe you've been a member of another institution. Maybe your job role has changed slightly, so it means that you're now more aligned to CIHT. So not being a member is not a barrier to entry, and all new applications will be taken on their individual merits. What you may decide following this webinar is that you actually, for a non-member, you want to apply for a membership first for MCIHT, and then in the future apply to FCIHT. That's absolutely fine. If you have achieved professional qualifications, and by that I mean qualifications such as IN, CNG, TPP, etc., this will strengthen your application. However, it's not a requirement. So I think that's one of the myths to bust during this session. You don't have to have CNG to apply to be a fellow. Many of our members and fellows are not engineers and they're not transport planners. So actually those qualifications would never really have been relevant or attainable to them anyway. However, they're still making an important contribution to the sector. However, having said that, our assessors will be looking for your commitment to your own professional development, which can take a number of forms. So it may have been through CIHT, but then there are obviously other different routes you can take in terms of your own personal professional development. As you'll be very aware, EDI within the sector is one of CIHT's priorities. So we do encourage applications from all sections of society and all locations. Our members work for a wide range of employers, from the public, private, academia, clients, contractors, large international organisations to small one-person operations. And of course, we welcome applicants from all these areas. And finally, on the screen, you'll see some job role examples. This is not by any means an exhaustive list. It's just an indication of some of the types of roles that people may be in when they apply for fellow, but this is absolutely not a tick box exercise. If you're outside of this, there's obviously you can still apply and become a fellow. We just want to kind of give some of the examples of some of the levels people are working at when they become fellows. I'll just leave on there for a second to look. Okay, how to apply. The whole application process is done online. And I just to caveat to mention, officially we reserve the right to interview candidates, but frankly, this is almost never done in practice. So really, this is an online application. It's a paper-based process. I think at this point, what I want to say is that it's quite a straightforward process in terms of applications. For those of you who have done the CNG or the TPP application, it's nothing like the intensity or the amount of paperwork that's required for those applications. It's a fairly relatively straightforward process. We'll go into the requirements in a moment, but just to get over, it's not a huge amount of work for you. Please, when you apply online, use your existing CIHT login. So to log in, use the email address that we communicate with you. So when we send you emails and updates, etc., please use that email to log in. When you start the application, we'll actually show you back all the information we already hold on you, so your name, your address, your employer, etc. If you're not seeing that and it looks like you're starting afresh, please stop and contact us, because it therefore sounds like you've created a duplicate account. Our membership email is on the screen, and I'll show that later as well. And please do update your information. One of the major challenges we have within CIHT is keeping everyone's information up to date. So make sure your postal address is correct, your employer details, your job titles, etc. are all correct. You may not be aware yet, but so thank you for joining. But August is a free upgrade month. Usually the transfer fee from member to fellow is £50. During the month of August, this will be free. And just to mention, if your application is successful, you'll then be on the fellow rate of membership from January 2024. So there is an increase in the fees. For the non-members on the call and watching the webinar, the free transfer obviously doesn't apply to you because you're not transferring from membership to membership. But if you joined in August, you would be on the pro rata rate. So you're only paying from August to the end of December. There's various fees depending on where you live, but just as an example, if you're resident in the UK, that would be £123. And again, that takes you to the end of the year, and then January, you would pay for all of 2024. Okay, so let's look a little bit at the requirements. The first one is a CV. One of the first things the panel will look at is your CV. Do make sure this is up to date and makes your current position and responsibilities clear. Many people will use their company's standard CV template. This is perfectly acceptable, it's absolutely fine. Just make sure this is written about you and includes work done at previous employers. Sometimes those company CVs can be slightly skewed towards what the team do. So this is all about you. So make sure that CV is personalised. Our assessors want to have good enough information to get a good idea of who you are and what you do and what you've done. They don't want war and peace. Have some sympathy for the panel who are assessing you. They don't want to be going through huge amounts of information. In the same vein, they don't want to receive very long lists of every last course that you've been on or academic paper that you've contributed to. So have a little bit of sympathy for your assessor. As I kind of alluded to a second ago, we sometimes see CVs written where it's not entirely clear what work you have done and what's been done by a wider team. CIHT Fellowship is absolutely about you as the individual, and it's work done in your current employer and your previous employers, and indeed outside of your employment, as in your maybe volunteering or personal life. So just make sure it's absolutely clear what you have done. And finally, we fully understand that some people will use a CV from maybe a recent job application, and absolutely, reuse this. We don't want you to rewrite everything. Just make sure it's adapted for the purposes of the fellowship application. We've seen a number of CVs in the past that have come in saying, I'm seeking to apply for a new position here. And it's, you're applying for a fellow here, so make sure the CV looks like you are applying to be a fellow. As part of your application, we require statements from you. You're required to write 3 statements in your application. Each is between 100 and 500 words. Just as a little tip, you might find it easier to write the statements outside of the application, maybe in Word or an email template. And once you're happy with your statement, then copy and paste it into the application form. In terms of the 3 statements, they're really important as they're the opportunity to really showcase who you are and why you are ready to be FCIHT. You should really be looking to show what makes you stand out and what you've done or what you do that is above the norm. It's just so it's examples of your role and some of the projects you've worked on, but maybe that step up, what makes you FCIHT worthy, if you like. There are three main sections and do play equal importance to all three. All of the information that you can see on the screen is also on the website, and indeed it's within the application form itself. A little note on the CPD element. As you should all be aware, as a CIHT member, you are expected to plan, record and reflect on CPD throughout each year. You should be keeping a record of at least 25 hours of CPD activity each year, so January to December. And remember, as a CIHT member or indeed a fellow, you may be asked to submit your CPD record as part of the annual review. Please also note that there's also an expectation now that some of your CPD is focused on decarbonisation. I spoke at the beginning about the CIHT themes, and decarbonisation is one of them. There is an expectation that your CPD does include decarbonisation. If you're struggling to find something around that, please do go to CIHT Learn, where we have modules. It should only take an hour or so. And that would be an excellent start to your CPD for decarbonisation. I will talk a little bit more about proposers and seconders in the next slide, as I know it's often a point of query for applicants. However, in terms of their statements, it's important to underline that these are written by them about you. We do sometimes see applications where the applicant talks about how they know their sponsor. So this is not correct. So you're not writing about your relationship with your sponsor, they are writing about you. Your sponsor statement should highlight why you are suitable for FCIHT. They may wish to highlight an example of something you've worked on recently, a comment on your leadership, etc., that really stands you out. Try and get them to be specific. Talk about something specific that you've done. We don't want so-and-so is, it's a great person. Yeah, they should be FCIHT. They're fantastic. Get something that really sort of, that's something that really stands them out. Just to note, we may contact your sponsor to verify their statements. So please do ensure their details are accurate. I do appreciate that the proposers and seconders is an area that some of you will have questions about. It's probably the most frequently asked question we have in terms of the fellow application process. So I'll try and address them as best I can here. In an ideal world, both your proposer and seconder will be fellows of CIHT. However, if this is not possible, we will accept a seconder who is a fellow of another institution. Now, we don't have an exhaustive list of what those acceptable professional bodies are. We are flexible in that regard, but it'd normally be someone from institutions such as the ICE, ISTRUCT, IMechE, IHE, etc. It could also be fellows of institutions outside of the UK, such as Engineers Ireland, Engineers India, Hong Kong, etc. So really, in short, a fellow of another well-respected professional body within the sector. As it says there, but I still don't know anyone. If you're outside of the UK and do not have a local committee or a strong CIHT presence, please do get in touch. But we are often asked that people don't know a suitable proposer. The advice for fellow applicants is to look at your wider network, using the modern expression, reach out, which I hate using that expression, but have a look at your wider network. Your sponsor doesn't have to have known you for a long time and tracked your full career. They could be someone you've worked on a particular project. So they could be a former colleague, maybe a customer or a client, someone you've presented with, someone you've had some work with. We're not asking them for extensive statements, so they're not giving huge amounts of information. If you're still struggling, now this is the point in the presentation that might sound a little uncomfortable, but if you are looking to be a potential fellow, really you should be getting involved with activities that bring you in contact with other fellows. So, for example, if you've ever been involved with a CIHT committee, a CIHT panel, or other CIHT volunteering group, you'll almost certainly have met and worked with other fellows who would absolutely be a suitable sponsor for you. Similarly, through any external groups, panels, networking groups, STEM activities, etc., you may have been involved with, should see you in contact with other fellows. So do have a look through your networks. Many of you will use LinkedIn. Do go through your LinkedIn. As I say, reach out. Do speak to your, if you have an HR department or a similar kind of working group. Look at your work connections. Many of you use Teams, Yammer, etc. Do look outside your immediate circle of colleagues for potential fellows who can support your application. If you are still struggling, do get in touch and we can try and assist you. We can try and maybe identify some people who work in your local area or even for your company that you're not aware of that we can put you in touch with. However, as I say, this might be the uncomfortable part. Do be aware that the answer might be that we encourage you to get involved with CIHT a little bit more. Maybe there's volunteering opportunities for you that might help you make those connections with other fellows. With volunteers, we have a range of volunteers at CIHT who do a range of great activities and great work for us. Some get involved heavily and spend a lot of time and a lot of their commitment, which we're hugely grateful for. Other volunteers, in terms of time commitment, isn't that great. They're playing an important role in what we do, but their time commitment may not be that much. So if you are time constrained, but you are looking at contributing and volunteering, we'd certainly welcome you to do that. I'm sure you'll find that a fantastic opportunity professionally. It will be good for you personally and professionally, and it will also help with your fellowship application. Just to run through some of the administration in terms of the fellow application. As I mentioned, all applications to be completed online. If you do have issues with the website, particularly uploading documents, just make a note of the membership email. Again, you'll see that at the end of the slides, and do include your CIHT number. As I mentioned, we are offering a free upgrade month in August. You can start your application now, just don't submit it until the 1st of August. If you submit it before the 1st of August, you'll be charged £50. So just start it now, start putting the evidence required together, but don't press the submit button until the 1st of August, and do try and get it completed by the 31st of August. Once submitted, we will acknowledge receipt. What we do internally within the office is we do an admin check for completeness, just to make sure we've got the right documents, that we can read them clearly, that the right boxes have been ticked, as it were. We won't comment on quality. So at that stage, we won't say, look, we don't think you're suitable, we're not going to accept this. All completed applications will be sent to the membership application panel. So the panel will sit, they'll view each application anonymously. They will go through the evidence presented to them, and they will make a recommendation whether that person should be elected as a fellow. We aim to get a response within 2 to 3 weeks. However, please do be patient. We are anticipating a lot of applications during the month of August. Our assessors are volunteers. They have their own work commitments and personal commitments as well. So we do ask for a little bit of patience during August. Hopefully, once you're elected, you'll receive notification and a certificate. Again, please be patient. This can take a little bit of time. As I say, we do anticipate August to be quite a busy month. And just be aware that if you are elected, that from January the 1st, you'll be paying the fellow rate of membership. If you pay by direct debit, you won't need to do anything. The fellow fee will go out as normal, and obviously you will be notified in the correct manner. There are occasionally people who are not selected for, not recommended for fellowship. In those cases, we will try as best we can to put some recommendations forward, some advice, maybe how, areas that can be looked at, so a future application can be made. Obviously, if you're not successful, it absolutely wouldn't stop you putting an application in the future. Okay, once you have become a fellow, well done. You've reached the highest level of membership within CIHT, and it's something to be proud of. Do make sure people know, both within your organisation and externally. Update your LinkedIn if you have one, and other socials. Make sure your work email signatures are updated. Do be proud of achieving fellowship. Let your employer know, particularly if they pay your fees. I'm sure they'd want to know, but generally companies are really happy and really pleased to know that you've become a fellow. It's great for the company as well as you as an individual. Many organisations like to support their staff and see them progress, and your company might want to put you on their own socials and in internal comms, and maybe want to profile you. So do make sure your company are aware. Because in the future, you will be able to support and propose colleagues. We've talked about the difficulty sometimes in knowing who are fellows, so make sure when you become a fellow, you make that well known. And it can be a motivation, if they see you've become a fellow, I can do that too. So, it should be a motivation for others. Having the FCIHT badge, it's all well and good, but you'll now really be considered and expected to support CIHT in whichever way you can. And then this can be through a number of ways. It may be through volunteering roles, which I've mentioned briefly, or through supporting more junior colleagues. For example, you may want to arrange CIHT introductory sessions. You may want to inform non-members about upcoming events that may be of interest to them. You may want to get involved in regional committees. Our regional and national committees do great work. Hopefully through your CIHT membership, you see some of the great events they're putting on, whether they be online webinars. Post-COVID, we're starting to see more in-person networking events, and some of the bigger award and dinners that we have that really do, I'm always amazed at how much effort and time our volunteers put in on a regional and national level. Getting involved with those is a fantastic opportunity. But you can, like I say, some of those commitments are quite large, so you can become involved in being a mentor, a STEM ambassador, etc. And do keep up to date with CIHT developments. We do have a huge number of resources available. As I mentioned, the webinars and the live events. The e-learning platform, CIHT Learn, hopefully all of you are well aware of CIHT Learn. Do make sure you're keeping up to date with these kind of developments, what the new modules are on CIHT Learn. Make sure you're using them yourself, and make sure you're informing colleagues. As a fellow, you're an advocate for CIHT, you're an ambassador for CIHT, and we do hope that you're spreading the words and you're making sure others are aware of what we are doing. Okay, I'm now going to pass the microphone, as it were, to Carolyn. She's an assessor for FCIHT. She's obviously a fellow of CIHT herself, and we'll just be saying a few words from her perspective. After we've finished, Carolyn's finished her piece, we'll then move on to the Q&A session. So if I can hand to you, Carolyn.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone, and thank you for your interest and welcome. We're absolutely delighted that you're interested in becoming a fellow. I don't have a presentation, but I am going to build on what David has been saying. So in addition to the definition that David gave of being a fellow, I like to think about the other meaning of the word fellowship. It's about being part of a community where you know and support other people at the most senior levels and most influential levels in our profession. And it's an amazing fellowship to be a part of. So as David said, I sit on the MAP panel where we assess all the applications for the status of fellow. And not all of them are successful first time. And I'll go into some of the reasons for that and what we're looking for in an application. So I do encourage you to make an effort. It's surprising, David's been through this, but some people just sort of plonk down some information that they've prepared perhaps for something else. And it's not always bespoke to the criteria, or it doesn't always help us to understand why you're such a good candidate for a fellow. So I really do encourage you to shape your information that you submit. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. Give us really good explanation of why you think you'll be a fellow. And that also helps us to give you feedback afterwards, whether you're successful or unsuccessful. Good information helps us to give good feedback. We do occasionally get applications that are just a bit lazy. Someone's chucked in a few sentences saying they've been around for a long time and they've got a big budget. You know, that's not enough. We want to know why you're outstanding. This is about making a significant contribution to our profession. So we're looking for people that are engaged, they're involved, they're already ambassadors, they're influencers. It's absolutely not about age. You don't have to have been decades in the role. You can be a great professional at different stages in your career, or you could have been around for years and doesn't necessarily make you a good fellow. So there are some sort of gateway criteria, but I will refer you back to David's myth busting. We do expect people that are senior in their roles and usually have a qualification in a relevant subject. But that's not always the case, and there are plenty of reasons why people have come into the sector through a different route, and all of these are acceptable. We do expect to see a maintenance of personal CPD, but we expect to see something a bit more than you've just been on a lot of courses. So all members of the institution are expected to keep up to date professionally and go on appropriate courses. We're looking for people that are doing more than that. So maybe you've done some research and you've presented at conferences, or you've been on secondments, or you've done different things to your CPD that really enhance your understanding and your influence in the profession. You may have spoken at conferences around the world, or volunteered on groups that have helped us to develop areas of the profession. So really think about your CPD as more than just courses that you've been on. What will make your application stand out? We really enjoy hearing about people who are engaged and ambassadors for the profession, that have perhaps been STEM champions, that go into schools. We don't want to hear you've just had one apprentice on a project. We want to hear that you've systemically helped your organisation or another organisation to bring on apprentices, to promote equality and diversity, and to do things that have really had an impact in those fields. We hope that you will have sat on committees and attended events in your region and nationally, and been involved with the profession. And we like to hear about how you've influenced things in the profession. So maybe as a result of the work that you've done, something's changed, government policy's shifted, or an organisation's policy and approach has shifted, because you've been at the cutting edge of the profession and helped us to move things forward. And also, David mentioned this, but do get your proposers to do some work as well. Ask them to say why they're proposing you as a fellow, and really ask them to think about a good statement that supports your application. You'd be surprised how many proposers just say they're a great person. I've known them for ages and they're really great. It's not what we want to hear. I'm sure you are great, but we want to hear what makes you a fellow. And as David mentioned, if you are doing all of these things and you're engaged with the profession, it's really likely that you do know a lot of fellows already, even if you don't know that they are fellows. So there is an expectation that you would know fellows that can propose you. And that there will be exceptions, of course, if you've been working abroad, or if for some reason you've come into the profession through a different route and you don't know fellows, then as David said, do reach out and we will help you to connect with fellows that can support your progress towards your application. But really think about that. We would expect that if you've been engaged in the way that we're hoping, and that if you really are a senior influencer and a leader in our sector, that you would know other people in the profession. So that's all I really wanted to say. We enjoy reading your applications. We enjoy learning about you. Don't assume that we know things, because we don't know about you until we get the applications in. I repeat that it's about the quality of information you can give us. We don't need long lists and long pages, but just a few examples of how you're operating at a level that sets you aside and puts you in a good position to be a fellow. So I'm really happy to take any questions that anyone has.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. That's insight. You know, it's great to get someone who's obviously looking at applications and has real insight. So thank you very much for joining. As Karen said, now I open up the floor, as it were, to questions. At the top of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. If you do have questions, can you put them in there, please? I can't see any yet. But please, yeah, please do start writing questions, and we'll basically, we've got to the hours, so we'll spend as long as needed. Let's take the first question as they come in. Can someone still meet the CPD requirements if they've been on maternity leave in the previous 2 years? Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations. I think it's probably in order. Yeah, there's obviously we take to account leave for those reasons. So really the clock, as it were, would there just be a pause, so it would be previous to that, and anything after your maternity leave up to the current date. Obviously there'd be no penalising for any gaps there. So yeah, it would just sort of take the maternity leave out of the timeline, and it would be for the previous 24 months. See. So I can see the next question. Sorry, my system's a bit. Is there a difference between sponsor and proposer, or are they the same? I do apologise in advance if I've used the word sponsor during this presentation. It's because we use the word sponsor in another in the CIHT application, and sometimes I get myself confused. No, it's proposers. Proposer and seconders are the same. If you're using one CIHT fellow and a fellow from another institution, really the main proposer should be the CIHT person, and seconder the non-CIHT person. Frankly, it doesn't matter too much. Proposer and seconder, no, there is no difference between sponsor. If I've used that word incorrectly, apologies, but yeah, the same thing. Hi, apologies since I missed the first part of the presentation. What sort of roles are considered under the senior role category? Yeah, it's a good question. What I'm going to do, I've got a slide, so I'm just going to go back through the slides, and we've got a few examples. These are on the website as well. Sorry, I think I've gone past it. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, to the person who asked about the roles question, I've got some examples there. As I said in the main presentation, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not a checkbox. You don't have to have one of these. It's an example of some other types of roles that our fellows will be operating in. But as Caroline alluded to in her piece as well, it's more than just that. It's you know, it's all the other work that you're doing around it as well. So yeah, just use this as an example, an indication rather than a required list. Look at the next question. I have nearly 50 years, congratulations, in the transport planning industry. So a lot of my CPD is from literally decades ago and long lost in terms of records. Would you just accept recent CPD and some activities? Yes, absolutely. Really, we're only looking at the last 24 months. So anything before that, whilst it's very relevant to you and to your career and to your understanding, we don't need to see evidence of that. In terms of evidence, we don't need masses of certificates to say that you attended X event. In terms of CPD at CIHT, we're far more interested in how you've planned your CPD, what your learning outcomes were, you know, your reflection on your CPD, what did you learn, what did you get out of it, and what you're going to do next from your CPD. Just saying you went to a course, right, you went to a course, but you know, you might have sat at the back on your phone. What we're most interested in is what you got out of that CPD activity. So we don't need huge amounts of evidence that you attended CPD, but we would expect you to be able to talk about your CPD.
Can I build on that, David, again?
Yeah, sure.
That CPD can take a real variety of forms. So, for example, if you've been on a study tour or if you've been to visit another organisation and see how they do things, you can learn in all sorts of different ways. And it doesn't just have to be about courses that you've been on. I would really encourage people to think widely about how they learn and how they've acquired knowledge and experience and met people in different ways.
Apologies, I think I might have skipped a couple of questions. Much of my application would be built around my work as a CTPPP reviewer. Assume that's the sort of thing that would hold weight. Yeah, so you're a reviewer for Chartered TPP. Yeah, you're taking your time out. You're learning about other people. Absolutely, yes. I'll let Carolyn maybe answer that one a bit more. But being a TPP assessor reviewer, sorry. It is a great example of someone who's really putting their time and their commitment to the industry. I don't know if you want to build on that, Karen.
Absolutely. We would see that as being something that's a contribution to the sector, that is, it obviously demonstrates a really senior level because you're in the position of being able to assess those applications. So that I think that would be an extremely valuable thing to put in your application.
I think the next question was pretty much the same. So I hope that answers that question as well. Just chat. I'm just looking at the chat actually because I think a couple of people have put questions in there. Let's see, put a minimum time limit council committee services to be relevant. Sorry, I'll read this out. The ICE put a minimum time limit on council/committee service for it to be relevant for fellow evidence. Does the CIHT have a minimum requirement for time served on committee council? No, it doesn't. Is the very straightforward answer to that. But obviously, if you are working on an ICE committee or council, again, the fact that it's not CIHT, it's the wider good, it's the wider sector. So, definitely put that type of evidence forward. The next question in the chat, as regards to sponsors, may I read the sponsor's statement differently on the CIHT as the requirement has indicated they should be a fellow? I know of no FCIHT within the MOD, a defence infrastructure organisation. Hope to be first with your description of a webinar. This may not be possible. Okay. It sounds like you're working maybe slightly outside of the sort of traditional fields. Do get in touch with this one. The MOD, by its nature, also there's restrictions on who can publicise who they are a member or not. So for that particular person, do get in touch with membership. We'll pick that one individually because I think there's legitimate grounds you might have an alternative sponsor there. We don't want that to be a barrier. Apologies, it looks like the Q&A is not working for some people, so I will look at the chat as well. In a previous job, I sat on national groups circa 5 years ago. Are you looking for very recent contributions outside of your current job role? Karen, maybe do you want to take that one?
Yeah, no, I think sitting on a national group that advances our thinking in the sector would be a really strong piece of evidence to support an application. 5 years ago, I think if it was a really, really long time ago, maybe it wouldn't be so relevant, but maybe someone's thinking about applying to be a fellow and actually they could have applied a few years ago, but they just haven't, for all sorts of reasons, they haven't put their application in yet. So definitely we would take into account that sort of example, even if it's not terribly recent. Yeah.
And I think we all agree that a lot's changed in the last 5 years, particularly. So yeah, I think that would be absolutely worthwhile. Next question: can your CPD be gained by your community involvement, promoting an improved highway layout in a local area? Yes, 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 yes. Again, Karen, if you want to add to any of these, I don't want to be too brief with my answers, but yes would be certainly the answer to that one.
Yes, I definitely encourage the widest definition of CPD.
Yeah.
Because anybody can go on all the set courses, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're advanced beyond anybody else in the profession, does it? Whereas working with a community, you're actually giving something back and learning something at the same time.
Yeah, I think just to add to the CPD debate, it's something that comes up occasionally, is I think maybe there's not a great understanding of what CPD is. There may be a more traditional attitude that it has to be an accredited course that gets you a certificate at the end of it, etc. But the attitude towards CPD these days is far more flexible. Your CPD record can't be full of "I read the TP magazine," but reading the TP magazine, you're gaining insights, you're gaining information. Yes, we're looking for more than that for fellow particularly, but there's a range of ways you can gain CPD, so it's not always that that formal course. It's a range of activities. I think I've covered all the questions that have been posted to date. If they haven't, please sort of wave a hand and I'll try and pick it up. Someone's just asked a question I saw flash up. What if your CPD is over 100 hours per year? Yeah, to be honest, I think if people actually looked at some of the stuff they're doing, it would add up immensely. I think for that one, I mentioned it in the presentation, have some sympathy for your assessor. Maybe pick out some of the top ones. We're assuming, frankly, that you're going to reach the 25 hours. So pick out some of those ones that, again, stand you out from the rest. Committee involvements, council involvements, those sort of things. Put those in. So yeah, let's be realistic. Pick out the highlights. Your assessor doesn't want to be reading through 100 different training courses you may have been on, or 100 different activities you may have been through. Well done for getting over 100 hours CPD though. It's commendable. Okay, I think the questions are slowing down slightly. As I say, if I have missed one, please repost it in the Q&A. Sometimes it's difficult when 2 or 3 come together. Another question, how should we demonstrate direct people management? That's one for you, I think, Carolyn.
Well, sometimes people send us in a structure chart for their organisation, or they just describe the team that they manage. And sometimes people manage larger contracts and might be not direct team management, but they actually have oversight of a very wide workforce. So just whatever evidence you can find of the level you are in your organisation and the scale of leadership responsibility that you have, the scale and level of leadership responsibility. But there's no fixed number of, you have to manage this many people in order to become a fellow. And some roles, for example, some of the academic roles might not have a very high level of management, but have a very high degree of research and influence and policy development. So usually a structure chart or just explaining what tier you are in your organisation, who you report to, and things like that can be really helpful, because if we don't know about your organisation, we might just be guessing at what your job title doesn't necessarily tell us how senior you are or what level of leadership you hold.
Thank you. The next question again is a CPD around CPD, and it's asking what the years cover. It's the rolling 24 months from the point of application. So it's good to show, from August 2023 and the previous 24 months to that. We're all busy people. We know that sometimes keeping your record fully up to date can be a challenge. I should just plug that within CIHT Learn, there is a tool for recording your CPD. So do look at that. It'll be really handy. You don't have to use it. It's not a requirement to use it. But CIHT Learn does have a CPD recording facility. But to answer the direct question, it's the rolling 24 months from the point of applying.
But I would, in addition to that, and an answer to a previous question, if you did something absolutely awesome that was 3 years ago, or just before the 2 years rolling years, you know, do mention that. Do pull out the most relevant and best examples you have, as long as they're reasonably recent.
Yeah, I think we like to pride ourselves at CIHT that we're flexible in our approach. You know, we're not too dogmatic in terms of it's got to be exactly that date and that day. You know, you're a day late. You know, it's all work together. You know, you're members of CIHT, so we're going to here to help and support you. We're not going to get too caught up that it's, the CPD was a day out of the time frame. Just to note, my colleague Merlin is putting a couple of useful links in the chat area. I can see he's just put the CPD dashboard link in the chat that you'll all be able to access. He's also put the membership email address in there as well. So thank you, Merlin. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in, I don't think. So I think I'll formally say thank you very much to Carolyn for speaking. That was really, really useful. I'm sure everyone on the line got a lot from that, so thank you. Thank you all for joining, whether you're CIHT members or you're looking to join at that fellow level. And as I say, do keep an eye on CIHT, some of the stuff we're doing. You know, it's really important, and it's great to get your involvement. And finally, in terms of your FCIHT application, you can start it now, but please do wait till the 1st of August, when it will be a free transfer. So we really do welcome your applications. So I'll end the presentation there. I'm actually going to stay online, but thank you for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and good luck with your applications.